Time for the new video, guys. This time, d4, d5, c4, knight c6. It's called Chigorin defense. Believe it or not, of all the side variations, this is the main one. Also, statistically, this is the fourth by popularity against d4, d5, c4. You have Queen's Gambit Orthodox, you have Slav defense, you have Queen's Gambit accepted, and then you have Chigorin defense. On the channel you can find Baltic defense, you can find Austrian defense, you can find Alpine counter Gambit, and finally you can find Martial defense, also very popular, especially amongst weaker guys. Get ready for a very interesting file and video because I came straight to the point with lots of refutations and novelties, and this is going to be especially good for medium level players because you're about to learn how to easily beat up your opponents. But at the same time, I just have to say that this is going to be good for beginners because there are lots of nice tactical tricks as well. So let's begin. After like d4, d5, c4, knight c6, we go with knight c3. I opted for this move. Usually, you know what I say. When they don't care about the center, then take it. Here, and against this variation, I wouldn't suggest this one, but I'd go with the knight c3 that famous grandmaster and author and coach Boris Savruk suggested in his grandmaster repertoire with the white pieces. So it's knight c3. So what's the point about this one? Practically they have two moves. They have either knight f6 or d takes c4. D takes c4 is more common. It's, believe it or not, 65% of the games people go with d takes c4. And those 35%, they go with knight f6. When they play knight f6, you shouldn't take immediately, but you should first play knight to f3. Another very important move in terms of getting an advantage. And here after knight f3, they have two moves. They have e6, which is nothing else but Queen's Gambit Orthodox, one of the main positions with a bad knight on c6. So you play bishop g5, you play bishop e7, e3 castles, and very important move to claim a middle game advantage is rook c1. Why rook c1? Because they have a stupid knight on c6. And for the rest of the game, you'd like to go with bishop d3, c takes d5, a3, b4, queen b3, short castle, and to slowly push on the queen side, mainly taking advantage of having this knight and taking into consideration that the knight on c6 is just a bad piece. So that's how you claim advantage with white pieces against this line. Sorry. Another line is bishop g4. That's a very common approach by all kinds of players. I played against from 1600 to GM level, and then you just take. This time you take because a light squares in b7 square is already weakened. So you play e4, they take, and you recapture. So at the moment, you've just built up a strong center, and this is your main advantage. They have to go with e5, but those who go with e6, you just go rook b1, taking advantage of the open b file and threatening just the pawn on b7. When they play rook b8, boom. So this is why I told you this is going to be a good lecture even for beginners and let's just say weaker followers of the channel, because there are lots of tricks. For example, take a look at the following tactics. Rook takes b7 followed by queen c6. You win a pawn and you just break everything. Another thing is taking advantage of the pin, knight on c6 and king on e8 with knight e5. That's why they're kind of forced to play this. And now you still threaten rook takes b7 followed by queen c6. They gotta go with queen d7. Boom. Now you threaten bishop c6 because the rook on b8 is hanging. Majority of my opponents in the past went for rook a8. Maybe it's a little bit better to do rook c8, but makes no sense. Makes no difference, sorry. You play c4 and d5 and they resign. You win a piece, you win a game. They can't take on b5 because the rook on a8 is hanging. This is why they go with e5. And when they go with e5, Very important is to remember that you just have to play d5. They can't play anything but bishop f3. And there is a game between two GMs. Bulgarian GM Delchev played against Greek GM Skembris. And Skembris captured an f3. He captured an f3. I'll show you why. Because in the case of knight b8, I'm going to show you a beautiful refutation of this line. I played it a couple of times, and it's kind of forced, and it's easy to learn. So you play queen a4, check, and you're about to win the pawn on e5. If they go with knight d7, if they go with bishop d7, you just bring your queen back on b3, threatening b7 and e5. They lose a pawn, and they're about to throw the towel into the ring. So they go with knight d7, you take. Lots of guys in blitz, even a couple of Indian IMs, tend to play something like this against me because it looks tricky, and if you don't know the line, you might lose. And after queen f6, looks like if you move the knight, you can't take the bishop, you can't take on d7, because they will include check, take on a1, and then you're lost. But a beautiful refutation here. I'm not sure if... Yeah, I believe there are a few games in the past, mainly correspondence ones. Bishop e2. Take a look at this one. You actually do the deflection. Bishop cannot take because of checkmate on d7. And if they go with queen e5, a beautiful move, bishop g4, threatening mate on d7. So when they check, believe it or not, bishop d2. What a refutation of the line. You have to say that this looks great. And when they go with queen a1, they want one rook. They're about to win another rook. Actually, you deliver checkmate. The point is that after queen a1, king e2, they can't save both queen and mate on d7. What a nice refutation of the line. It's pretty, but once again, shocking 11th move, bishop e2, that absolutely breaks apart Black's game. And finally, if they play bishop f3, that's why I told you they have to play like this, and they play knight a5. What kind of position is this? First of all, we have a nice control of the center. Second thing, we have a bishop here. Third thing, we have better development. So Delchev played against Skembris, queen g3. He threatens rook b1 to put a rook on the open b file, goes after the pawn on e5 and g7. This guy cannot play anything there, so in the game was queen f6, bishop g5, bishop b5, captured, played rook to d1, and with a complete mobilization of the white pieces, Black soon resigned the game. So just like you see, after knight f6, knight f3, we've seen bishop g4 and e6, and conclusion is that they have to take on c4. In Everock's Grandmaster repertoire, he gave bishop g5, and it's absolutely fine. I even taught a couple of my students, pretty good players, FMs and IMs, to play like that, and they won their games. But in the meantime, even better line appeared. So you just go with e4. After e4, you build up a center, and you'd like to take this pawn on c4. When they play bishop g4, now they weaken the center, and that's the only hope of the Chigorin players who just want to give up on the center and development, but they would like to break it just like in the Grunfeld defense. But actually, Grunfeld is way better. Of course, after bishop g4, d5. Only move is knight e5 and bishop f4. Take a look at this one. If they capture by bishop, you recapture by pawn. You threaten to win this knight. So they gotta go knight to d7. You bring the bishop back, play f4, take on c4, play queen d4, long castles, rook g1. Completely winning position because of massive developing advantages for white. Knight f to d7. A beautiful move is bishop e5. And after knight e5, queen d4, threatening this knight in the center on e5. So they do not have time to take and deliver fork because you take on e5 and they're lost. So they have to play knight f3, and they've just won. They just won a pawn. But you don't care about that. And rook g1 will also be fine, but I like queen c4. I like queen c4 with a beautiful initiative for you because you got a pawn back. You got a huge development advantage, and they can't touch and take the pawn on h1 because you play queen a4. So after queen b5, you would have bishop b5 and win the queen on d7. And that's why I told you lots of beginners might have, or let's just say, objectively speaking, weaker, lower rated guys could have like a very nice experience with this video because you can learn lots of tricks. So finally, after bishop f4, if they go knight g6, nothing. You just go back to e3, unlike the main line where you go to g3. So after a5, bishop c4, a6. Why a6? Because they would like to secure bishop d6 so you wouldn't have knight b5 to win the bishop pair. You also feel like kind of a danger behind this knight h4 ideas because both of these would be hanging and you play bishop e2. And after bishop d6, a crucial move in white strategy happened in a game of Wishy Anand against Vallejo, and he played knight to d2. Such an important move in the white strategy. You'd like to exchange bishop for the bishop, and when Vallejo captured, Wishy Anand captured, played short castle, played rook f to d1, placing one rook into the center, g3 restricting the knight on g6. Also take a look at the bishop on d6, which also looks bad, playing another rook and the last piece placing into the center and jumping with the knight from d2 to c4. An ideal development by white. I very much like white's position. I believe it's practically positionally winning for white. Anand beat Vallejo a couple moves later. And finally, if instead of exchanging the light square bishops, they just go with a bishop d7, castles, I found two approaches. I like very much, now they kept the light square bishop, so it's a little bit more difficult for you when you play g3. Karpov played following plan against Milov in Swiss 1997. He played rook to c1, and I always like Karpov games, but you just have to consider that Karpov has a extremely difficult style for your opponents. He's joking you, like Bach constrictor, but from another point of view, it's difficult to follow his moves and plans. Queen e7, a3, knight b3, played bishop f3 to keep the bishop around the king, played knight a2, jump with the knight on c5, and played knight b4. Beautiful control of the queen side. Everything somehow, just as usual in Karpov games, looks so smooth, and I like this plan. This is a typical plan where you just play on the queen side. Although, I find it a little bit dangerous when your opponent plays rook g8 and push g4, so I decided to give you another option. Another option is to play g3 like Baccarat. So you don't care if they ever play bishop h3, you would just play like this, and then you can even exchange them. After b5, played a4, breaking this, capturing, and playing queen to c2. After c6, played rook a6, played knight b5, a beautiful tactical shot against Mista in Germany 2011, took on d6, won the bishop pair, and afterwards managed to win this game very easily. So very, very nice game played by Baccarat as well, and this is what I really like about white's game. Bishop pair, much better pawn structure, full activity, and everything seems to be so good. All things considered, knight f6 refuted. Let's go for the third move, d takes c4. If they play d takes c4, I opted for d5, nothing else but this move. And when they play knight e5, I remember, first of all, I need to show you what if knight a5. I remember we played like 15, 20 years ago, and I was playing with my club mate at that time, Grandmaster Milkovic, and he played against an IM. And that IM tried to keep the pawn on c4. Milkovic came up with queen a4 check. And after c6, which turns out to be the only move, do you know what's the refutation of this line? b4. Knight is trapped. And you take advantage of the en passant. You will rarely see this motif in chess because when they take like c takes, a takes, boom, knight on a5 is hanging. After e6, because they hope for the last thing. If you take, they will go with bishop b4, and black would be even better. But then after e6, you just play bishop d2. Guys, cannot even imagine how many games I won with this trick against knight a5 system. So it's forced, it's easy to learn, and it's very nice. So after b6, you play d takes c6. You already have a pawn on the 6th rank. King on e8 looks weak. Knight is kind of stranded on a5 on the queen side. Everything looks looks good for white. And in the case of b4, if they don't play en passant but play b5, that's the main line. You take, and they play b4, kicking this knight away, and e takes d5. I remember Larry Kaufman in his book, and with a white, also his repertoire with a white pieces that was based on the engines, said white should be better after e6. And I remember I read at that time his analysis, and I all the time had a problems what after e6. So I'm about to give you a little bit more detailed approach and plans how should you play these games. So first of all, you take on d5. Why do you take on d5? In order to make these pawns kind of weaker. Don't forget, they have 2 pawns for the piece. a5 doesn't look good either. And they have these central pawns pretty advanced. So knight e2 to block these pawns. That's the first plan. And when I analyzed these positions, I said, okay, this is nice, but what am I going to do with the light square bishop? Are you ready? Knight f6, bishop e3. And now one might say, but why bishop e3? Okay, I understand that you want to block it. I understand that you want to attack the pawn on a7. But what's the point of this one? Well, there's a huge point of bishop on e3. And there's a very nice positional plan. So that bishop goes on d4, opens up e3 for the knight getting there, and then you're just completing development with g3 and bishop g2. This is what we usually lack when we analyze. It's a nice thing to say e4 and white is better, but let's just go a little bit deeper and to have like a clear plan. So I'm here to give you a clear plan, and that's it. After like knight a3, you play g3, bishop g2 is gonna happen, and white is so much better because basically white is up a piece. And you just have a solid game. Not solid, actually. Computer says you're winning, but I'd say you're much better. And finally, knight e5. I remember that I had problems with this knight e5. Should I be going with the most logical and tempting f4 or bishop f4? You should go for f4. So this is also pretty useful for top players. Because I just analyzed this and I just realized that the f4 should be a killer thing here. I remember when I analyzed at this time, and I believe somewhere else I found, maybe in Avery's book, that f4 is not good because of knight g4. But let me just show you how to refute other lines. If knight e7, that's known refutation even from New York 1995 in a rapid game between Ivanchuk and Morozevich. e4 to get the pawn on c4. You already have a fantastic center. You're much better. They got to defend c4. You play a4 in a typical way where you try to chase this knight away with a4. And after a5, you play bishop e3. You want to take on b6. You want to take on c4. And after e6, I only found one game according to absolutely the best engine move here. But okay, one might say, why this move engine if I can simply play like Ivanchuk? Bishop takes, bishop c4, playing knight f3, castles, and taking on e6. And I'm fine with this. But after king h8, I believe that they can kind of try to save this position. I'm not saying it's good. Of course, white is better. Ivanchuk won that game. But it's defendable. It's with certain counter chances. I prefer much more queen c2, because queen c2 gives me an option of long castle. I still keep an option of bishop takes b6 and capturing afterwards on c4, but at the same time, I'm challenging. If you take, I'll take, play long castle. Now you have lots of problems with the queen and the king, with a square d5. I'm gonna choose. How am I going to take? By pawn or by knight or by rook even on d5? And believe it or not, in this game that I found that was only played against the system, the guy played bishop c5 and white captured by bishop. What a nice game, and what a big and very rich choice of possibilities taking on d5. So you can take with every single piece and it should be good. White captured by knight, played knight f3, captured by rook, threatens knight e5. This guy played like this, played knight e5, threatening on d7, not allowing him castle. Brought a rook on d3, so he can even use it to double up these rooks, or maybe use it for the attack. Queen c4, threatens rook d7 to win on the spot. Plays castles. g3, solidifying his position so he can't play any bishop d6 or whatever. King b1, placing the king in a safety. Doubling, okay, capturing, taking the control of the 7th rank and placing this rook on the 7th rank, taking, threatening checkmate, and basically after rook to d1, black resigned. Black simply resigned because there is a very simple move here. When they play like, I don't know, like f6, okay, f6 is mate, rook d8 and check, but if they play g6, you can even consider going with this. They gotta take, they gotta play bishop c5, and now you just take, go with the king, and you're gonna be very fast, and because they cannot manage to be in time there, they gotta play b6 and you come here. If they go king d6, you just go king b5 and they lose the pawn and they lose the game. So all things considered, knight d7 is bad. Knight g6 is not good either. You go e4, you want to get a pawn back on c4, and when they go with e5, you play f5, you play knight f3, threatening pawn on e5, consequently knight becomes weak in that case on f4. Take on f4, play e5, and don't tell me that you would like to play white's position like this with a pawn structure like this. White is completely winning, followed by lone castle next. And that's why some good players play d6, although e6, a very simple refutation. For example, I would try to say, I would play probably the most logical thing here, bishop c4 in a blitzer bullet games. But you just have to take, offer this guy to exchange queens. You take by king, taking advantage of not being able to take by bishop because of fork. So they gotta go with pawn. You play bishop c4, you play knight f3, and place your king into the safety. When they play knight f6, knight g5. Weak e6, threatening knight f7, both of these rooks, what is so much better in game. Igor Stoll, a theoretical master against Firouzja, a GM from Croatia, who's one of the main representatives of Chigorin defense with the black pieces. And finally, knight g4, that famous knight g4 that was considered to be fine. I believe that in a couple of years with these newest engines, things changed a lot. So let me just show you what happens and how should you play. You should go e4. You want to get the pawn on c4. When they play e5, and that's the idea of knight g4, they just go with breaking on the dark squares and they would like to play bishop c5. Looks kind of scary, but you play knight f3 and look what happens. If they capture e takes bishop c5, you play h3, you play queen e2, play rook f1, play queen c4, and you have an amazing initiative and completely winning for white. But if they play bishop c5, I'm about to show you only a game that was ever played in this line. You play h3, knight a3, bishop a3, and you take on e5. I said only game because the following idea has never been seen before this game. Knight e7, bishop c4, knight g6. White is up a pawn, but black puts his compensation in a pretty good control of the dark squares, mainly thanks to the dark square bishop. He's got a bishop here. He's got a possibility to play castles, queen, or rook e8 and to get this pawn on e5. And why did I say that the following idea was only played in the next game? Because this is the only time you're going to see the following combination and analysis by white. h4. What's the point? You'd like to chase this knight away with h5. They gotta play h5, which means that they already weakened the light squares in the position of the knight on g6. And now you're probably wondering, how is this knight weak? It's defended with a pawn on f7. e6. This is a crucial break. And you get the pawn back for a full initiative after e5. What a beautiful one. d5, this looks good. You threaten queen d3 to win the piece on the spot. They gotta play something like knight f4 to prevent queen d3. You play queen c2, defending on g2, threatening g3, trapping the knight in the center of the board, playing rook to d1. After e takes, played knight takes d5. When knight takes d5, queen g6 check, and rook f1. I just showed you a clear refutation of this line. And in this correspondence game, a game that was played between pretty good, around 2400 GMs in correspondence, just like you see, black, was torn apart in this game and lost very soon. Hope that you enjoyed in the presentation of this main sideline. And we've just completed all these side variations, and from the next one and from the next video, I'm going to start teaching you some main systems against d4. Thanks for watching.